Hello, everyone. Welcome to MJ Hobby Corner. I'm Julie, and I am back today with another episode of What's the Fluff? So we'll be venturing into malifaux today, at least one more time. I have probably 6 more videos that I wanted to on malifaux, but just to give everyone variety, including myself, I'm going to venture into some other games for a little bit and put malifaux on hold. But there may be one more coming before I officially put it on hold, because there's one more story that I would like to tell. But we'll see about that. But I will be venturing into other games. I have a few ideas, thanks to my wonderful subscribers. Thank you, the ones that commented on my video and gave me some ideas. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your comments a lot, actually. Today we are going to, it's going to be a little different. We're going to give a little synopsis of what we know so far, and then I will continue on a little bit and tie it all together, so to speak. But first, we'll catch up on what we know so far. So, what did we know so far? We know that the breach happened in 1787, that on Earth's side at that time, magic was declining, and the people were very concerned about that. So they sent all their top practitioners to find another source of energy, of power, and magic. And obviously they succeeded. In doing that, though, a lot of people, a lot of them were killed. There was a lot of mass destruction when that happened, right? And then people started, after things stabilized, people started venturing into malifaux to see what the deal was, right? And then we had, I think it was 10 years later, was when the blizzard happened, right? And when the blizzard happened, the breach closed. So right off the bat, I'm thinking, blizzard, weather changes, Rasputina, right? We talked about her in the last video. And by the way, guys, if you haven't caught the other videos, we'll be linking them, put the card up for you. And check those out. Definitely, give those a look. So, okay, where are we? Rasputina, right. That's the first thought that I had with that. Now, 100 years later, right, to the day that the breach closed, it reopened out of nowhere. And this time there wasn't as much destruction as there was the first time. There was a little bit, but not much. So then they think, what's happening, right? So the guild then is formed, because they wanted to make sure they had the complete monopoly on soul stones, because of what happened when the breach closed and there was no more energy. So the guild takes over, right? And they're a ruthless bunch. That's what happened to that point. And then we meet Seamus, right? Well, first, we meet Seamus because he's a resurrectionist. And we meet Molly Squidpidge, and we find out that Seamus wants to unbury Philip Toomer's body because he feels, I think he has answers for him, I think is the idea there, right? So Seamus goes to the graveyard to get Philip Toomer, and then he comes in contact with Rasputina, who is also after Philip Toomer's body, but for a different reason than Seamus. And we find out that what she really wants is the journal, the notebook that Philip has on his body, in his pocket or coat or whatever. And so Seamus, in the ensuing fight and battle and all of that, he ends up with Philip Toomer's head. And then Rasputina does end up with the journal. So that's where we're at to there. Now, after we meet Seamus, then we find Rasputina at the train station, at the malifaux train station, and she is headed to Ridley Station, which is, you know, like the outlying areas of malifaux, dangerous out there. So she's headed to Ridley Station because she's headed to Kythera. So that's where we ended it, right? That's where, yeah, that was where we stopped on the last video. So that's where we are so far. Pretty interesting, I think. And then today we will continue on with the outcasts. And so let me see here. Outcasts. So here we go. I'm going to read the description of the outcast. Malifaux is ruled by the conflicting interests of powerful organizations. The Guild was the first to seize power in this world, establishing a rigid and fascist law that guarantees their control over their precious soulstones. Despite their control, the Arcanists have managed to build a powerful resistance against that oppression and maintain a black market soulstone trade. Concerned with the buried secrets of the past, the Grim Resurrectionists loot the city of its treasures and claim the inheritance of an extinct people, wielding terrible powers garnered from the grave and forgotten lore. And what agenda the nightmarish Neverborn seek is unknown, but their presence and influence are obvious in the terror that they sow. But to assume these forces represent all interests in malifaux is naive. Within the tangled skein of dirty politics in this city, there are many players. Whether they have been rejected by the power players of malifaux, or because they have their own individual agenda in the city, those not directly associated with the primary powers in malifaux are known as outcasts. It is impossible to outline a clear profile that identifies these individuals because each is distinct and must be considered separately. Now I want to stop there for just 1 second because I wanted to point out that the outcasts, the faction of the outcasts is very different from the rest of them, in the sense that the other factions, their motives and their beliefs are similar, if not the same. But with the outcasts, the only thing they have in common with each other is that they have nothing in common with the other factions. So I think it creates a different dynamic, and it is one of the reasons why I really enjoy the outcasts. So let me continue. Most of these outcasts represent the lowest caste in malifaux. Some of these unfortunate souls are able to beat out a meager existence as a petty crook or hired gun. A small few demonstrate talents or skills of note that allow them to climb from the gutter and exert their will upon the landscape of malifaux intrigue. To navigate and thrive in the dense web of corruption and malifaux by oneself is a singularly difficult task. These individuals broker tenuous alliances to further their unique agenda and rely just as much on skilled negotiating as they do on martial prowess. The primary powers of malifaux identify the value of these lone wolf outcasts because the unique traits that have allowed them to flourish in independence can be put to guilds uses. Their independence alone is a valuable commodity, providing plausible deniability to any faction fortunate enough to gain their services. Money, however, isn't always the chief concern of these enterprising individuals. The outcasts have these outcasts have wide-ranging goals. Some seek only to expand their criminal endeavors and become influential crime lords. Others are more altruistic, wandering the streets of Malifaux to protect its citizens from the nightmares that haunt them. These outcasts are at the very center of the city's corrupt politics. Crime, and constant violence. They may be guild servants, but the outcasts are also purposeful in their acts, achieving their own goals and demonstrating power the guild hasn't even noticed yet. Excuse me. Okay, so that's the outcasts. We're going to be talking about Leviticus, steampunk necromancer. Many individuals find themselves in Malifaux as convict labor or the unfortunate victims of unforgiving contracts to the guild. A small few have come to reside in Malifaux with their own purpose, to find in Malifaux their fortune. Leviticus is one such individual. Malifaux provides many things to a man like Leviticus. Foremost, he has the privacy to pursue interests that would be considered distasteful in a more civilized environment. In the art of combining steel and bone, cog and sinew, Leviticus is a savant. Within his well-equipped offices, his own body has received augmentation, and despite his advanced age, the man is well suited to the rigors of this frontier city. He is almost always attended by his apprentice, a young woman named Alice, who we will get to when I'm done with Leviticus. All right, a young woman named Alice. She too bears evidence of his craft, her left arm replaced by a mechanical prosthetic. Together, they operate Captivating Salvage and Logistics, which offers a wide variety of services. Many of those services are legitimate, but a pragmatic man like Leviticus can often be found conducting more illicit affairs. There are many who disapprove of the relationship between the wizened Leviticus and the young Alice, rumor mongers trading tales of inappropriate conduct between the two. These rumors don't seem to impact the success of their business, however, as they have a reputation for getting things done. All right, so that's Leviticus. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Alice. Let me find Alice. Alice is actually Rusty Alice, and I think that's because of the rusty prosthesis that she has. All right, let's talk about Alice. Riding on the coattails of her mentor, Alice has gained a modest reputation in Malifaux for her exploits. Full of youthful energy, the antithesis of Leviticus, her enthusiasm is seen in her quick tongue and bursts of violence. When it's time to fight, she leaps into action with a frightening zeal, and despite her young age, she's a prodigy with her firearm, able to outshoot men with twice her experience. Many question her sanity, as she can frequently be seen conversing with the rusty mechanical prosthesis that has replaced her left arm, as if it acts independently from herself. Others believe it's her relationship with Leviticus that keeps her sane, his calm demeanor tempering her reckless drive for more action. Regardless, her curiosity and loyalty, as well as her skill, are easily noticed by those who meet her. So that's Alice. Now we're going to talk about Victoria. And if you saw the last episode, which if you haven't, why haven't you? Just kidding. But if you saw the last episode, Rasputina mentioned Leviticus and Alice, and she saw them speaking to a woman in a red cape, and that turns out to be Victoria. So that's how that ties in. Now, let's talk about Victoria. Though young, Victoria has had a long and successful career as a bounty hunter and treasure seeker, even before the reopening of the breach. For many years, she traveled the world in search of lost secrets, adventuring into forgotten locales and capturing singular artifacts. Many speculate her collection is invaluable, defying all attempts to gauge its worth. Reputedly, her collection includes an armory of swords that contains even the lost Nahanto of Masamune. When a message from a mysterious employer suggested a contract in the newly rediscovered city of Malifaux, she could not refuse. The treasures of a whole new world were laid before her. Arriving in Malifaux, Victoria found conspiracy surrounding every commission, forcing her to avoid the intersecting designs of several powerful players. In her adventures here, Victoria would encounter the infamous Neverborn of Malifaux. Infamous Neverborn of Malifaux. Singular amongst humankind, Victoria's confrontation would result in a lasting partnership between a human woman and a never-born creature. This creature, a reproduction of Victoria herself, would give the treasure hunter privileged insight into the history of this city and this world. Today, these two have established themselves as the premier soldiers of fortune in Malifaux. Many mistake the duo as twin sisters, or even a single woman with an uncanny ability to be in two places at the same time. The truth of their relationship is a closely held secret, and few suspect that one of these women is a native of this world. So I find that extremely interesting, the whole idea of Victoria having this twin that's actually a never-born creature. I think it's pretty cool, and I think it gives her a large advantage. It gives her a huge advantage over other people surviving and trying to survive in Malifaux. It gives her a huge advantage because she has this ally from that world. I find that really pretty cool. What do you think? Let me know. So far, we have talked about the outcasts and Leviticus, Alice, and Victoria. And now it is time for the best part, I think, of these videos. It is time to get fluffy. So, are you ready? Are you ready to get fluffy? Are you fluffy yet? I'm fluffy. Alright, I know I'm silly. Anyway, so here it is. We're getting down into the fluff now. So, you need to, or you don't need to, but I suggest, if you would like, to grab a drink or a snack or a paintbrush. There is, Miss Victoria, literally no place on earth like Malifaux. In a little less than an hour, we will pass through the breach of the Great Barrier and go beyond this world into another, into the heart of a city built by a civilization and history unknown to us. This world, this city, is possessed of a living energy that permeates all things. You'll feel it in you. The old man gave his new acquaintance a sly look, an expression that sat easily on his dry, weathered features. You'll feel it change you. Before we even pass into that world, you will feel it flow from the breach's crackling circumference, like a flood washing over you. You can't find this energy anywhere but Malifaux. Victoria, a young woman with striking razor sharp features, boyishly short hair, and a sheathed sword lying provocatively across her lap, gave a polite nod. Everyone had heard fantastical tales of malifaux, of course, from terrifying childhood stories to impossible to believe stage plays to breathless and unreliable first-person accounts in the newspapers. But it was quite another thing to hear them from a man who had clearly been there before, while on a train merely moments away from the place itself. Victoria realized her heart was racing, just like it did before battle. The man, Leviticus he called himself, was clearly warming to his subject and carried on. Whether the energy hardens in the ground to form crystals, or whether the crystals are the source of the energy radiating it through everything else in the world, the solid state of this energy is called soulstone. It is the currency of titans. Whoever possesses soulstone has the power to change the world, to topple nations, to blot out races, and to manifest any wildest whim as reality. This is the reason, you see, that the Guild regulates soulstone trade so strictly. It is no coincidence that the Guild seems ever more pervasive each day. Its power grows as its store of soulstone increases, and every day they strip more of this precious mineral from the ground. Look now through the window and see the long series of cars that follow us. All of them are empty now, but tomorrow this train will be burdened with the fruit of malifaux, the elixir that transforms men into gods. It is this mineral, this soulstone, that can make anything possible. Whatever agenda the Guild pursues in its dim corridors, we can only hope it's benign, true? Here I joke about far-fetched conspiracy theories when I should warn you of the dangers of this place. See, even now, you can see the glow of the breach on the horizon. I fear you will soon arrive and be ill-prepared for the dangers that await you. I do not embellish the atmosphere of malifaux, whether it is the magic of the place or simply the promise of limitless wealth. This city brings out the worst in men. There is murder in the air. It gets in the blood. The constant threat of death from the world's hostile environment, from the plague of creatures that haunt it, the neverborn, causes men to act like animals. Despite the towering ruins of civilization you will find there, this is the wilderness. There is no law in malifaux. Men will lie, cheat, steal, and even cannibalize their fellow man for even the most meager gain. Just the men? Victoria asked, a mischievous glint in her eye. How dull. Leviticus frowned. Whatever your business there, it is not the sort of place one calls home. I have lived in many places, sir. Can't say I've ever felt home in any of them. But I always slept well at night. I always sleep well at night. Victoria drummed her fingers pointedly on the sheathed sword. Your city of malifaux is not the only place one finds thieves and murderers. It may be the only city that actively imports thieves and murderers, however, Leviticus said, still frowning. Dressed practically, Victoria wore a red traveling cape around her slender form and thick serviceable boots on her feet. A pair of crossed belts hung low on her hips, and a sleek firearm rested on her right hip. Across her lap, the scabbard held a long, curved oriental blade. The obvious craftsmanship in the scabbard sat at odds with her plain clothes, scallops of warm-stained cherry wood set in pale teak to give the illusion of swirling cherry blossoms. The beautiful scabbard had managed to attract the attention of at least one of Victoria's companions, although despite her drumming her fingers on it, he was still making far too good an effort of not looking directly at it. Across from her, the only other passengers in this particular car were her self-appointed tour guide and his female companion. The man looked like he was fresh off the boat from the Empire, with his dress coat and starched shirt, like some erudite scholar more at home in vaulted libraries than frontier trains. His attention to etiquette and expansive vocabulary weren't virtues yet in style in the New World. Aside from his rather elevated sense of self-importance, the man seemed rather advanced in age as well. He carried a cane, but that seemed insufficient to accommodate the limp Victoria had noticed as he took his seat back at Eagle Valley Station. A seat, Victoria noted at the time, he had to limp several carriages to reach past countless other potential audiences for his monologues. He wore a kind of mechanized brace on his leg that still facilitated his ability to wear neatly pressed trousers. One of his hands, too, bore evidence of his curious augmentation, a technology Victoria had never seen before. It reminded her of clockwork toys she'd seen in boutique windows back east. His escort, introduced only as Alice, shared similar modifications, though of significantly poorer repair. It seemed as if her entire arm had been replaced with mechanized parts, and these were rusted and worn and would make an eerie whine when in motion. She seemed to be barely into her teen years, decades younger than her chaperone, and dressed in a long skirt and humble blouse that clashed with a tomboyish demeanor. It was this girl, Alice, who openly studied Victoria's sword, her eyes wide with an endearing curiosity. Occasionally, during Leviticus's sustained lectures on the annual rainfall, chief industries, and political climate of malifaux, she would nudge him in the ribs with her rusty elbow. The squeak of the movement and the sharp corner of her elbow made the gesture impossible to ignore, though Leviticus did his best, batting the girl's arm away each time she tried to win his attention. Victoria turned to Alice, about to test the pair's intentions with a plausibly true tale of the sword's discovery. It was then, however, that Victoria felt a sudden warmth. Her skin flushed, and she lifted her hand to draw her cloak close, conscious of the rosy blush spreading down over her chest. She was suddenly acutely conscious of the racing blood in her veins and the martial drumming of her heart. A wondrous excitement filled her. Turning her head to the window of the train car, Victoria saw the breach swing into view behind a low escarpment. Never before had she seen such an astounding sight. A walled frontier town was huddled around an enormous loop of brilliant electric flame. The image reminded her of the fiery hoops lions leaped through at the circus, but this fire was a brilliant blue and burned with long wispy tendrils that seemed to tether to the sky. The tracks cut a fortified line right through the town, and the train charged along it, gathering speed right at the circle. Through it, Victoria could see tall buildings crowded together in the distance. They seemed to shift whenever she was not looking right at them, furtive and sinister movements that could not possibly be real. "They don't do that up close," Leviticus said, as if reading her mind. He was craning his neck to look through the breach as well. "An illusion, then?" Victoria said. "A mirage caused by the breach?" Leviticus turned back to her, his expression unreadable, and with the gaze that looked at her across impossible eons. "Yes, if you like." Ever more intense, the energy flooded into Victoria's blood, making it feel as if it were boiling in her veins. Without thinking, she slid her sword a fraction out of its scabbard. The crackling buzz of the breach filled her ears, and though she knew Leviticus was talking to her, she could not hear him. All her attention was forced on the swirling maw that was swallowing up the train ahead of her car, and suddenly they were hurtling through it. She felt as if her body was held in a bolt of lightning, every muscle suddenly contracting, and just as suddenly the sensation faded. Clenching her eyes, She tried to hold on to it. It was the sensation of power. It was the certain knowledge that reality would not just bend to her will, it would dance to it. It was the strength to accomplish any feat, destroy any enemy, achieve any goal. Though that sense slipped away like sand between her fingers, she could still feel a portion of it smoldering like hot coals inside her. It appears you might be particularly sensitive to the energies of this world. Not everyone has such an ecstatic crossing. It was Leviticus's voice. Victoria opened her eyes to see both he and Alice staring at her. It took her only a moment to recover. "Oh, did we cross? I hadn't realized. I must have drifted off." Alice smiled in amusement before once again digging an irritated Leviticus fruitlessly in the ribs. The train slowed and issued a shrill whistle as steam vented from its cylinders. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time talking today. Please excuse that. I apologize, and I will try not to. Anyway, the train slowed and issued a shrill whistle as steam vented from its cylinders. Rising from their seats, the trio made their way to the rear of the car. Leviticus stepped aside so that Victoria could disembark first. "Malifaux Station," he said. "Please watch your step." Everything that was wrong hit her all at once. What had been a warm golden afternoon Earthside sun was now a fragile morning light whose spears pierced gray clouds like icicles. The world looked painted on glass. What light there was too bright, too harsh, the shadows too deep, and the colors luminous and rich in a way the old masters would have killed for. Victoria did not know if this was just another side effect of her passage through the breach, but if it was not fading. Was this life under some distant cousin of the sun? It was invigorating, chilling, and unsettling all at once. On the wind came the dirt of the city and the oil smoke of the train, mingling with familiar but far-off hints of decaying swamp and distant snows. But the wind here was a strange creature, and its breath held spices and savors unknown. And beyond was a city, just as Leviticus had described. The towering buildings could have been Old London or even New Amsterdam, and if it weren't for the subtle assault on her senses, it would be difficult to imagine she was in another world. Looking to her side, she noticed that her traveling companions' attentions were riveted on something across the station. Following her gaze, she caught sight of a pale-complexioned woman in a long coat and stockings. She wore a thick fur cap on her head. And who do you think that is? You know who that is. That is Rasputina. The woman bowed her head in Leviticus's direction, and the elderly man returned the bow respectfully. Alice dropped a very polite curtsy that Victoria wouldn't have thought her capable of. "Ridley Station now departing," the conductor's voice sounded again, and a ghost-skinned woman quickly boarded the train. Turning, Leviticus smiled warmly, repeating his bow. Producing a card from his jacket, he handed his information to Victoria. Printed on the card in rather bold letters were the words "Leviticus, captivating salvage and logistics, an eye for every detail." "If you have need of my services," the man said, in a tone that suggested she would, "please look me up." Victoria thought a moment, and then bowed in the style of the Three Kingdoms, just to give the old man something else to ponder. "I'll do that, thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you both, but I have an appointment I must keep. Farewell." Waving a hand, she departed and was quickly lost in the crowded station. When she disappeared, Alice jabbed Leviticus sharply in the ribs with her elbow again, inspiring a hoarse grunt. "Blast your elbows, child. Yes, I saw the sword. You follow her. I'm off to see Mistress Quid." And that is the end of that story. Now, so Miss Crid is Sonia Crid, and she is a member of the guild. So clearly Leviticus is, well, if he's going to meet with her, that means that he is somehow allies in a way, right? I'm not entirely sure because I still have to read a little bit about that, but I know that she's a member of the guild, and I could sense from the story, I don't know if you got the same sense that I did, but that that was not coincidental that Leviticus and Alice ran into Victoria. You get the sense, at least I did, that it was all planned. And I'm thinking, because of that, that might have to do with Sonia Crit in the guild, and that. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there, right? What else? What else can we talk about? I think that's it. I think I really love Malifaux. Like I said, I've got so many stories that I have left to tell, but I will be focusing on other games now. I can't remember the name of the one. I'm going to take, well, anyway, there's a few that I'll be looking into. So keep your eyes open, because hopefully, hopefully I'll be able to do another one and get another one out to you shortly. I have a lot of fun doing these, and I get really involved in it. But like I said before, I hadn't been feeling well for a while, so it was difficult for me to be consistent. Still not feeling great, but better, and in a sense, and I hope to be more consistent. So let's see what happens. But there you have it. I hope that you are all well. I do want to mention that like most people, I think I've been preoccupied with what's happening in the world, and this for me is a good distraction. But I do want to say that my heart is with anyone suffering, and I really do hope and pray for a peaceful resolution to all of this. So, with that said, you have a great day or night or whenever it is that you're watching this, and I will see you next time.